If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There are creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcast, and so many more. You can also make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. So download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started and have fun.
I'm so excited and I just can't fight it. I'm about to puff, pass, and I like it.
Welcome to the podcast. On this week's episode, I have the pleasure of interviewing Ms. JM Balbuena. JM has written the book, The Successful Cannabis. She is the founder of Cannabis Synergy. She's also a U.S. Navy vet, Dominicana, and an incredible human being. Sit back, relax, and enjoy. JM Balbuena. Welcome.
That is me. Thank you so much for having me. I'm super excited when you guys reach out. So
thank you. I'm so stoked that you're on. You are a powerful, powerful woman.
Thanks.
Please tell me how you went from a 9-to-5 to a Navy vet to a badass CEO within the cannabis industry.
It was a journey for sure. I graduated college. I was not made for the cubicle life. It was pretty depressing to me to think, that's after graduating college, that's what life would be about. And then from there, I always wanted to join the Navy. I didn't because I graduated high school shortly after 9/11. So no woman in my family had ever joined any military service type of situation. And my mom, was like, no, we're at war, plus I want you to go to college. My parents didn't graduate from college. And then my oldest sister, she was married right after high school. And she got her degree later on. But at that point, my mom was like, no, you are going to be the one, So essentially went to college, graduated, had an internship there, led to a job offer after. And I was just not happy with the 9-to-5 situation. It felt so monotone. And obviously I was not consuming cannabis at that point. So I was pretty much dealing with that raw, essentially. And then I just decided to follow my dream of joining the Navy. And I did, and that was the best decision that I ever made. And funny story, I joined the Navy on 4/20/2010. That's when I shipped out to boot camp. So my Navy dates are 4/20/2010 to 4/20/2014. And
that's
then
awesome.
And then the rest is history after that. Just obviously I was in the Navy. So while I was in there, I had an accident that led to ramifications, essentially dealing with PTSD, dealing with physical pain, and had a concussion from that. So dealing with what that, what that developed after, and then cannabis was introduced into my life by another veteran as medicine, that he was using it for PTSD. And then I actually met somebody in the space who, kept throwing the word around legal, and that sparked my curiosity even more. And the rest is history. I started with him here in San Diego, actually. And then once I felt comfortable enough to stand on my own 2 feet, I did. And here we are.
So how did your family react or perceive your decision to become a cannabineur?
Girl, let me light up for this one. I'm just kidding. My sisters, like my immediate family, as far as my sister, they both were fully in. They thought that they trust me, in making decisions as an adult, especially in business, because since I was a kid, I've been in, either my first ever dollar I made was selling fruit in a little stand in front of my house when I was in the Dominican Republic. Fruit that I like picked from the trees in the neighborhood. So they always knew that I always had that in me, where I, always had that business mindset. So when I told them that I was going to go all in into the cannabis space, like on my own, with starting my brand, and I started with the consulting side first. I mean, since I had been doing it for 2 years, in partnership with Dwayne, who's the person that I started with, and I still work with him currently as well. It was only natural, because I'm like a natural leader. I can't just be, I have my own ideas and I like to implement them. And it was time.
Yeah.
So I did. They backed me up. My mom on the other side was not too fond of that situation. She was more on the cannabis or marijuana, oh my gosh, drug dealing, type of situation. To date, she's still not that, to her it's a federal illegal situation. So she's still a little bit concerned, but at the same time, she's seen what cannabis has done for me, as far as getting over the hump with the ramifications of the accident from the Navy and things like that. So she knows the plant has, and accepts, that the plant is beneficial, and has medical benefits essentially. So it was a journey, but I think we're in a good place.
Good. That's great. So how widespread would you say legal cannabis is right now?
I think it's a really good time to be in cannabis right now. Statistically, the majority of America, almost 70% of Americans believe that cannabis has medicinal benefits. And as you know, more than 30 states already have some type of cannabis program implemented, whether it's medical, whether it's decriminalization, or fully legal and I should say fully regulated, including adult use and things like that. So I think it's widely spread, even in the world right now. You can ship CBD to, I believe it's 92 countries. And, I know a lot of people may think it's two separate industries, but CBD is a sector of the cannabis industry. And I know some CBD brands don't want to be associated with cannabis, but I'm like, it comes from the same plant.
Yeah.
And then creating that separation just adds to the stigma, So, so if you count CBD, like, we are in an amazing time and space to be a part of the cannabis industry.
Yeah. So what's the status quo with legalization in the US?
So in the US, again, I think this is the closest we've ever been to legalization. Obviously, we still have a lot of work to do. I mean, I'm in California, the oldest and the biggest market. And we're still struggling. We're still struggling with getting social equity in place and implementing that. We're still struggling with regulation and getting that to a point that it's fair for the operators, fair to the consumer, and then even fair to the social equity aspect that, to me, and I know you guys read my book a little bit, it goes beyond granting licenses to people, because there are not enough licenses to remediate what the war on drugs and cannabis prohibition caused,
Yeah.
So it's a journey. I think there are enough people, enough of us having these conversations, bringing awareness to different things, and then taking action towards making things better, that it's going to get to the point where we're going to get it right, nationwide.
So why do you feel cannabis is treated so harshly to begin with?
Well, to begin with, obviously, that I think that was a racial situation. Back in the day, you know, when Harry Anslinger first started the Bureau of Narcotics Control and things like that, it became kind of like an agenda to find the new thing to fight against. So obviously, alcohol was no longer prohibited, so they weren't pursuing that. And without having something to pursue, then that department is useless. So I believe that the low hanging fruit, given the racial tensions in America, was, you know, cannabis, because most of the people consuming that were people of color, you know, whether African Americans or Mexicans that brought it through the border. And it just went down that rabbit hole, and look at where we are today, where mass incarceration has been such a elephant in the room for this particular industry. So it was a racial thing, unfortunately. And now I think with social, unfortunately in one breath, but I think that having that baggage now gives us the opportunity to actually do something really great for disenfranchised individuals or communities, actually, because it's a lot. Yes. But I believe that history gives the cannabis industry, as it becomes legal, as it becomes normal, the opportunity to just, beyond the benefits of the plant, now use the ROI, the return that the implementing the industry brings. We can use that now to help our communities with respect to education, healthcare. There's so much that we can do. Some states like Colorado, it's a great example that they've used a lot of the tax revenue from the legal cannabis or the regulated cannabis industry to, you know, put back into the education system. And that's great, because what better than education to give back? That's the gift that keeps on giving, essentially. So we need to do more of that.
I never knew that. So that's awesome.
Yeah, that's so with the propaganda campaign with the new collection with Boycott Shitty Weed, my lifestyle brand, that's what we're bringing awareness to. The origins of prohibition and why things happen, and, you know, and how we got here. And who contributed to, you know, the wrong side of history, which is the criminalizing nature, criminalizing the cannabis plants, and then the people, and we call that villains versus heroes. So we have the people that contributed to criminalization as the villains of the story, and then we have the people that were that had advocacy at the forefront in this space as the heroes. So we shed light on Jack Herrer and what he did in his research about the hemp plant, and bringing to the forefront the history of how the plant had been used in many different industries, and for medicinal purposes and things like that. Then we have Mary Jane Ranburn, that, you know, she pioneered the brownie edible, the infused brownie, and she did it, you know, as an advocate. What she was doing was having therapy or medicine with infused brownies to individuals that were suffering with during the AIDS crisis. You know, and she was helping the LGBT community like massively. Actually went to jail and got arrested, got caught with butter, you know, oil, brownie mix and things like that. And essentially went to jail for that. She was released, but she was an older lady. And obviously she was also a white lady. So that also had its privileges, even though it was a federal crime. But, you know, she was doing great work, and that's, you know, that's essentially what matters there. And Dennis Perron, another hero who, because of him, we had Prop 215 in 1996, which essentially made California the first state to ever implement a cannabis program. It was for medicinal purposes only, but it's what pioneered legalization. So
nice. I just feel like I learned so much. I got so many crinkles in my brain. So your book, which I read, I loved it. The Successful Cannapreneur. Say that 3 times fast, right? So I thought it was such an awesome book.
Thank you.
I really truly feel like anyone could read it, not just someone who's interested in becoming a cannapreneur. I found it to be kind of just like the building blocks of being an adult. I loved it.
Thank
it was
you.
a self-development book. And I've already talked about it to so many people. So
thank you.
Yeah, I mean, like it's so also so well written. I can't say enough.
I appreciate it. I'm actually working on the audiobook because I'm an audiobook person myself. So
typically I am too. So I'm like, for me to pick up a book and read it these days, right? It's gotta be really attention grabbing, and I was hooked.
Awesome. That's awesome to hear.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So,
super thankful.
Yeah, also, I mean, like you're amazing. I'm pregnant. It's yours.
That's probably the best compliment I've ever gotten.
Oh
man, that's awesome.
I want to ask you a few questions about it, but I want people to buy the book and read it because it's really just so much information. But I'd like you to touch on a couple of things if that's okay.
Absolutely. What's up?
Awesome. So how do you feel that legalization will impact the traditional or Black market?
How will it impact the market? I feel like it depends on where, because it's each market, California is different than Colorado. Colorado is different than Michigan. Michigan is different than New York. New York's different than Florida. Every single market has its little kinks. Now, I think federal legalization will be what would trigger decriminalization overall. So essentially what that would do, I think, is trigger letting anyone that's in prison for cannabis crimes that are nonviolent, immediately they will have to be let out. So if we're speaking at a federal level, I think that would be one of the things that would catapult us forward to addressing the criminalization of cannabis. And starting by letting people out that are in prison, and then stopping from pretty much putting people in prison going forward. Because in the states where it's still controlled, people are still being incarcerated. So I think that would be the greatest impact that it would cause if it's legalized or at the federal level. Now, what it is supposed to do in an ideal world would be allow people to build businesses if they wanted to, or grow their own, at home for their own purposes or whatever the case may be. But what it's doing, unfortunately, is in many places, and California being one of them, is leaving people that have been in the traditional market out of the legal or the regulated market, because either they can't afford the fees, because let's say you had a criminal record in dealing with cannabis, and then there are maybe where you're at, there are no social equity programs and things like that. So currently, as it stands, I think regulation is causing more problems and leaving people that have the experience out of the market. And when you do that, it cripples the market, because these people are still going to grow it. you know,
Right.
but obviously on their own terms. And it's so much easier. Why? Because you don't have to pay taxes to somebody else. The market for cannabis is huge. People are still going to want to buy, and because you don't have to pay taxes, because if you know if you're doing it in the traditional market, you have the biggest margins, so you're able to give the best prices.
Yeah.
So
Ain't that the
it's
truth?
and it's just like it sometimes it boggles my mind, like who's creating the regulation and why. Like
Right.
what exactly are you thinking?
I mean, the
But
taxes are so high. It's a shame because
extreme.
I like the dispensaries, and I like that I can kind of try out different things because my dealer wouldn't typically know what he's selling me.
Yeah.
So like,
I mean, in California, we definitely don't have that problem. The dealers probably have more varieties than the
probably,
dispensaries.
probably. It does suck though, because it's like you get raped with taxes.
You do. You really do. It's so unfortunate. And at some point, I think that's going to change because I don't think it's sustainable. It's not when people can just grow cannabis in their backyard. You know how many people want to grow their own?
Yeah. Me.
And not, you know, some of us don't have a green thumb, unfortunately, but you know, there's a lot of people that do. And cannabis is a plant. All you need is a little space. And next thing you know, you're pretty much have a whole pound that now it's fully yours. You grew it, you know exactly where it came from, you know exactly what went into it.
Right.
You know, and that's super important in this space, because you can have some shitty weed and
Yeah.
I'm talking about the type that might be, you know, moldy. It might be have some pesticides, metals, and things like that. That when you're growing it in mass amounts, sometimes that's a possibility.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, I just hope I'm hopeful that things will change, and I think there's enough of us, like I said earlier, having the conversations, bringing awareness, and taking action to change things. So we'll get there.
Yeah. So chapter 11 discusses social equity. So what do you feel that the future holds in stores for the people who are negatively impacted by prohibition of cannabis?
Yeah.
Specifically people of color. Many are still incarcerated, and some feel that they're still legally bound to be imprisoned. So what's your take on that?
The take is, number one, no one should be in prison for weed.
Right.
There's most of America already is on board with that. And isn't that what a democracy is? You know, we should be following suit with that. But as far as social equity goes, and I think I mentioned it earlier, we have to do better. We have to do better, move beyond just creating a set aside number of licenses to pretty much to check a box. I think that's, in my opinion, and I know you read the book, so you probably read something along the lines that I feel like that's super disrespectful. Yeah. It's disrespectful to think that, let's say in LA, 100 licenses are going to address the fact that thousands of people have been incarcerated. And think about this. Something like that does not just affect the people that went to jail. This affects families. This causes a generational effect that I believe is not going to be addressed with having a dispensary or having a delivery service, 2 or 3 people having that, that's why I think it's like a slap in the face. What I do think is that and I'm speaking for the state where I operate, which is California, I think that we should use the revenue that comes from cannabis taxes, which are extreme, instead of going mostly to policing, they should go back to the community, again, creating educational programs, creating health and wellness programs, mental health awareness programs, creating just programs that would help people to break generational curses that, having, the father missing because they went to prison for cannabis, having, look, let me tell you something. Most of the people in California that have been to jail for cannabis or prison, it was not for like commercial, like illicit commercial activity. It was mostly for consumption amounts of cannabis on the person. So most of those people were not trying to be dealers, or they weren't trying to start a business. Most of those people were just teachers, hairstylists, maybe skaters, just your average Joe who essentially was just enjoying cannabis and may have had a joint, may have had an ounce, may have had, just small amounts. That's over 80% of the people that have been incarcerated in California were not necessarily selling cannabis or distributing cannabis. So having licenses available to somebody that spent 5 years in prison for, 2 joints, for a blunt, for an ounce, now you're essentially creating a problem. Because let's say this person's like, oh, I should have a license now, but they have no knowledge, or even didn't even have the interest in participating. And now you create a person that is in it not necessarily because that's their dream or that's what they wanted, but now they have access to that. And I'm not saying there's anything wrong with them having access to that. What it is it creates room for predatory circumstances where somebody now with money may take advantage of them. Somebody that wants in for whatever reason, and now can potentially create a situation where that person is not following their best interest because they don't know better or something like that. It just creates those types of situations.
Right.
And that's why, at the same time, social equity is a thing that hasn't necessarily been introduced in cannabis before. So it's a learning curve there, but I think we need to focus more on the community aspect and identifying, in this zip code, we caused a lot of damages. What are the needs of that community that we can use the tax revenue in cannabis to give back in there so everyone can benefit, so hopefully we get there. It doesn't seem that many of the social equity programs are taking that approach, but I'm gonna keep saying it until I get my hands on one of those programs and we start testing the waters with something different.
Right. I believe you can do it too.
I'm on it.
So cannabis is still rejected on a federal level.
Right.
One would only assume that you would have to be financially equipped to make it in the business, but you say otherwise.
Well, I say otherwise because there's so many different ways to get into the space. So, like we said earlier, CBD is it's a sector of the cannabis space. And in, let's say, Alabama, where they are implementing a medical program, but it's not rolled out yet, you can start a CBD brand, or you can start a CBD or a hemp farm and things like that, where now once if you want to get into the THC side of things, you now have a foundation because you've been dealing with a sector of the industry already, so you can do that. Then you have you want to get into the ancillary aspect of things, you don't necessarily have to touch the plant. Like, you don't have to grow it, you don't have to sell it to be a part of the industry. So if right now you're an accountant, guess what? In this industry, accounting is super important. You can make the cannabis industry your niche and, learn the ins and out of the needs of the industry with respect to accounting and, make your bread and butter there. The same thing goes for, let's say, legal services. The cannabis space needs all the cannabis businesses need everything else that a normal non-cannabis business needs: accounting, administrative, marketing, legal, financing. All of those things are avenues to enter the space as well. Now, for the people that, let's say, well, no, I want to have a dispensary, things like that, then you got to do your research. You have to understand, the market. You have to know like how much is going to cost, like in that market. And if you don't have the money, then put a deal together. I mean, deals happen all the time. And there's a thing that it's called other people's money, that if you get a business plan, you understand what you're doing, what you want to do, the elements that the different factors that go into it in order for you to get a return, put that in writing and shop it around and see who with money wants to invest in your idea, in your business plan, and take it from there. You just got to get creative.
Yeah. Watch a couple episodes of Shark Tank.
That too. I mean, yeah, do your research like that.
Yeah. So your book is packed with so much information. What was your research process like, and what challenges or setbacks, if any, did you have while writing the book?
So my research process was, I would say I had been planning to write this book for a couple of years. So I read a lot. The first thing I do is read what's going on in the industry. I read at least 3 different articles in the morning to know what's going on. And sometimes, with like statistics and things like that, that I know are super important. And I want to remember for whatever reason to either discuss with somebody else or things like that, or bring it to somebody's attention. I have my flagging, the flags on email, I don't know if you have Apple email, but in my email, I have the different colors. So I have the colors of research. So then I had that during the book. When I was writing the book and I was writing different things, I literally would go back to see, oh, okay, let me quote this guy. This is perfect. So that's how I did it. And then for the chapter 11, where I put all the links and all the different things, those are things that when I was starting my own stuff, relied upon. So those are some of them, may have not applied to me, but because there are so many ways to get into the space, they may apply to somebody else. So I still thought, those resources should be put out there, just because I speak to so many people on a daily that are looking either to get into the space, or cannabis did something good for their life, or even they don't enjoy it as much and they kind of want to discuss why or how, so it's good to always have those resources, especially as somebody that's trying to make a name for themselves in the industry, because you can provide value to people with that. So that's just how I have it kind of like organized.
Nice. Yeah.
So I can get back to it, and then it actually came in handy for the book. So
yeah. Well, I can tell you're organized, because that book is so organized. It's so good.
I did have an editor though. Oh, but as far as the challenges, I think for me was not writing myself into like a corner. So when I first was writing the book, I was writing just a lot, and I did not know like where to end, or where, if it was ever gonna end. Especially because, cannabis, this industry is so fast paced.
Right.
So it took me 3 months to go through the whole process of writing the book, and then having the manuscript that now I can give to my editor. And that whole thing, it was just, I had to have a few sessions with her, so I can actually come to an end in a fashion that didn't feel like I was um, overwhelming people with information.
Yeah.
But I was able so essentially my editor was really good support in helping me kind of like shape it up to be something that, for instance, you who never met me, you're reading it, it's in my voice still, but it's pretty much like you and I are having a conversation. And then at the end I ended up with, my personal advice, which is the mindset of how to digest all of this.
Yeah. So I mean, I love it. Can you give us any hints for any future books or projects that you're working with? And can you also touch base on your other brands?
Absolutely. So with Jack's Cannabis, which is my dispensary, we are solely medical right now. And then um, the San Diego, and not because we want to, because San Diego County's laws are a little bit different and difficult than most areas in Southern California. But they finally reached the consensus that they're gonna allow us, and quote unquote allow us to actually have adult use sales. So that's coming up towards the end of the year. So I'm super excited about that. The Boyka Shitty Weed brand, we have our propaganda collection out, which essentially covers most of the information that we were talking about earlier, prohibition and what that has done and the people involved, the good and the bad. So check us out at bswnation.com. And we like to say we're doing wearable advocacy. So wear your advocacy on your body. I was going to say sleeve, but just everywhere.
Yeah, everything's really
But
cute too.
oh, thank you so much. I appreciate you. And what else do I have going on? I got the audiobook for the Successful Cannapreneur. It's going to be the 1 year anniversary reboot. We're going to do the audio. I'm also working on the Spanish translation. So that Cannabis Synergy, we're producing. Channel 7 is one of the shows, Tarot and Cannabis. So we have season 3 coming out soon. We have another personality, Shag Wellen. We're producing for him Shag Wellen's Smoke Spots of San Diego. So super cool. We go to dope ass places in San Diego and have a little sesh and pretty much give the history of the area and why it's important, and a little history of California cannabis as well. So we're doing a lot of things, super fun things. And obviously at the end of the day, everything centers around cannabis education and cannabis advocacy, and ultimately with the purpose of normalizing cannabis in business, in wellness, in entertainment, in culture, just everything.
Wonderful. And last but not least, where can our friends find you?
Yes, please follow me on Instagram at _JM Balbuena, BALBUENA. And follow my brands too at Boyka Shitty Weed, at Cannabis.Synergy. And I hopefully say hi to me.
Yes.
I'm super available.
Yeah. You are super fun. I had such an incredible time speaking with you. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you so much. This was awesome.
Thank you.
Looking forward to sharing it with my community once it's available. And maybe we can do it again some other time.
Absolutely. You're coming to Philly in
Yes.
November, right?
Yeah, I actually went to school in Pennsylvania.
Did you really?
Yeah, I went to Scranton.
Well, that's like so far away.
Not from Philly.
It's like so far away. It's in the middle of nowhere, PA.
Pretty much. But I used to go to Philly almost every weekend.
I love that.
So I used to go to Philly or like to Penn State games and things like that. But yeah, it's middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I went there once, and I just remember I went there for like a play, and I had a Krispy Kreme donut, and that was pretty much my memory of it.
Yeah, well, they filmed The Office there too.
True. That's one of the best shows too.
They were, when I was in college, the show was on, so they were like literally across the street from the university.
That's actually really cool. I probably would have fangirled really hard.
It's fun.
So again, thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking time out of your day.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys.
Absolutely.
Keep doing your thing.
Yeah. When you come here in November, let's try to link up.
I'd love that.
I won't give you shitty weed, I promise.
Awesome. I know you won't.
No. All right. I'll talk to you soon. This will Cynthia will do up some little promos for it and everything, and then she'll send them to you too.
Okay, awesome. Can't wait.
All right, I'll talk to you soon.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. I hope that you guys loved this week's episode because I sure did. I think I say that every episode, but seriously, I have been blessed to have the opportunity to speak to so many incredible people, and my list just keeps growing. So please make sure that you follow us on Instagram at Puff Puff Pass the Podcast, and please follow JM Balbuena at her listed links. Thank you so much for listening. Please tell all of your friends about us. Let's all be friends. Ciao, babies.